Hi, I'm Kirsten MacKay, and I'm going to talk to you about arts and neurodiversity. If I asked you to picture an inclusive building or a learning facility, what do you first picture? Ramps at the front door, wider corridors, accessible toilets? Sure. But what if I asked you a harder question? What if inclusion isn't about what we add, but about what we protect? Because for some children, inclusion does not start with policy. Inclusion starts with a pair of oversized, noise-cancelling headphones and some classical music. When my brother David was little, we knew he was different, and the world just felt a little bit louder to him. And the reality was that his world was louder. Back then, autism wasn't trending. And we didn't need a diagnostic report to see that he was different. Every change felt like a battlefield. And classrooms were overwhelming. And birthday parties, endurance tests. And when the lights were too bright, and the noise was too sharp, and masking just seemed so impossible, he would reach for those giant headphones, and he would put them on, and classical music would flow through his ears, and something amazing would happen. His breathing would slow, his body would settle, and the chaos would just organize itself. And that was the first thing that I understood about education, and something that we struggle to accept even today. That creativity is not decoration, and it shouldn't just be added on to make things look pretty or make it seem things okay. But it is something that is so important for regulation and communication. It gives us access. And that spark, that small, quiet musical spark, can ignite to something bigger. My parents were fortunate. I'm not going to be saying lucky here. I'm going to say fortunate. Because when my brother was diagnosed with ASD, we were sent to immersive training at an institute in Scotland. And they taught us there how sensory overload felt, that how fluorescent lights weren't just bright to him, that they could feel like needles, and that a loud classroom could feel like being inside an engine. But most of all, and the most important lesson that still sticks with me today, is that they taught us that he didn't need fixing. He just needed to be understood. But here's the uncomfortable part about all that, is that that institute was private, it was expensive, and it was a privilege. And while we were being trained in how to handle a new diagnosis, other families were struggling to survive, and the system carried on. And the gap between what was possible and what was provided, children fell through. Why am I talking about this, and why am I mentioning it? Well, my family lost everything. And when the money disappeared, so did the support. So, what happens when the system doesn't catch you? Now, before I get down that rabbit hole, I'm going to tell you about my big idea and why I'm stood on this stage today. Because the research is clear. Music strengthens executive functioning, it strengthens the brain, it supports language development, it inspires regulation, reduces anxiety, and it creates neural pathways that make learning possible. And the truth is that arts aren't extra, they're access. And don't get me wrong, the arts are not for every child. But if we only ever offer one type of reward, one type of cognition, one type of success, I truly believe that we're not preparing students for the real world. So, we moved to Spain. Random, right? No financial security, no nothing. And guess what? David's diagnosis did not stop. It was still going. And he needed to be in a school. And so we tapped up state systems. And here's the thing about my brother. He has partial photographic memory, so he learned Spanish más rápido. See what I did there? I'm still working on it. But there we are. So it wasn't an intelligence issue. He would have slotted right in. The issue was the class sizes, the overbearing classroom, and teachers who just didn't know how to deal with his type of ASD. And that's when we realized that the systems were not built for every learner. And the burden, it shifts to families, and it shifted to me and my mother. We had to get him into an international school and fast, because we knew that's where the support lay. But the problem was, we didn't really have the finances to do that. But in that space, I learned something that has stuck with me even to this day. One of the 3 jobs I worked while I was raising money was I got to sing in a restaurant. And I know it sounds like I'm not a singer, I can assure you I am, and they would pay me to do it. And a family would come in every week with a non-verbal girl. And I would notice when I was singing that she would acknowledge me and try and sing along. So I went to her family and I was like, hey, what's her favorite songs? They told me Disney, and I was like, say less, Queen, I got you. So I added Disney songs to the playlist. And something amazing happened. She sang back. And at first it was small sounds, but by the end of the holiday, it was full Disney duets. Joyous, a little bit off-key, but we had fun. And that's when I realized that something's so amazing. Because her family came out to me and said, hey, we're going to explore musical therapy when we go home. And that was it, the shift for me. Because I know that music reached something that language could not. Now, let me be clear. Because, art, music, it isn't for everyone. And I'm not telling you that if you get diagnosed with something or you have anxiety, go and listen to music and that's going to fix everything. Please, don't hold me to my word. I'm saying that everyone has a spark. Everyone has something that regulates them, right? And for my brother, it was classical music. For that little girl, it was Disney songs. For other kids, it could be coding, robotics, sport. But the real issue I found while I was studying and researching this talk was that education, mostly, is designed around compliance rather than curiosity. And at international schools especially, we get the chance to innovate because we have autonomy and we get to lead and we don't have to follow. But that doorway sometimes can feel really small. And if we only honor one pathway, do we really shrink success? Do we dim a spark? Can we design for diverse minds, or do we just not want to? Because at the core, it's not about music. It's about the access. And let's be honest, we all know creative engagement strengthens the foundations of learning. So, eventually, through relentless effort, we got David into an MYP school. And he thrived. MYP, by the way, is Middle Years Program, for anyone who doesn't know. I think I'm in a room of very knowledgeable people. And he thrived. His spark was bright. The education was flexible. He felt that he could do it. And he graduated from the Middle Years Program. And then it came to the DP. And that learner profile did not suit him. And it just didn't fit his logic. And if you know my brother, none of you do, that's a very silly thing to say, but if you know anyone with his type of ASD, logic is a competitive sport to him. And so I said to him, hey, you're going to do the DP. And he's like, no, I'm not. I don't like it. I was like, no, you're gonna. And he said, why do I have to study standard level physics if I want to be a lawyer? Now, young me could not answer him. I bet many people in this room could give him a very educational, brilliant, supportive answer. I couldn't. I just said, you're just gonna, okay? Because just do it. So he did, bless his heart. And ultimately, he didn't complete the DP. And that's okay. Because now he is in the civil service. And he is a truck photographer. And he's going to hate this next part, but he's also an influencer. He uses his truck photography to raise awareness about autism. And he does really well on Instagram and Facebook, but he mainly does use it to stop the stigma about autism. And yeah, that spark that started with those big giant headphones, it never left. When David was little, he was overwhelmed. He would reach for those headphones. Years later, in a bar in Spain, that little girl sang along to Disney duets with me, not because the curriculum told her to, but because she recognized herself in that sound. And that's the spark. Because here's the lesson. Education is not forcing children to fit the systems. It's designing systems so that children can access themselves. And listen, not every child will find that through music, or arts even. But that's okay, as long as we protect their spark. We can offer flexibility and autonomy, not as add-ons, but as access points. Because if we build around these access points, we're not diluting the standards of education. We're making excellence reachable for everyone. The opportunity for us is to make sparks part of the infrastructure and access points not as add-ons. Because inclusion isn't about making space at the table, it's about redesigning the table. So my challenge, my end of my talk, is to find that spark within yourself, find that spark in your students, find that spark in your family members, and protect it. Because when we do, we create successful students. We create regulated nervous systems, confident thinkers, humans who can just access themselves when the world gets a little bit loud. And that, for me, ladies and gentlemen, is education. Protect that spark. Thank you.